Hello, fellow detectives. Welcome to Unlocked, the official podcast for all things Nancy Drew by Her Interactive. I'm your host, Tammy Tuckey, and this week we welcome voiceover artist Andrew Joseph Perez to the show. Welcome, Andrew.
Hey, thank you so much.
I'm glad to have you on the show. We were talking a little bit about weather before we started, and it's actually kind of convenient. I didn't even think about it, that's related to the game that you're a part of, which is Trail of the Twister. But before we jump into that, let's talk about, you're a comedian, so what kind of inspired you to get into the entertainment industry and become somebody who tells a lot of jokes? Because it seems like it's not the easiest job in the world, in my opinion, to make people laugh and to keep making them laugh.
I think one of the best examples is when I was a kid, my family has a bunch of old home videos, and my younger brother, who's disabled, loves watching all of our old home videos. And one resurfaced a couple of years ago. Oh, God, I must have been, I don't know, second grade maybe. Our project was to build a newspaper, like the front page of a newspaper, all about our life. So it was, here's the headlines of the Andrew Joseph Perez Life and Times. Here's what's happening in traffic. And one of the pieces that I had on there was for the future. We were supposed to do a piece for the future. And I said that I want to be an actor because I like making people laugh, I like performing, and I really like all the attention. And then I looked to the camera, dead into the camera, and go, I really like all the attention. And I think from that point forward, I kind of knew that this was kind of the path I was going to go on. And there's so much that you can do with comedy and with performing. It's right now we've just started November, and I do the Movember campaign. The Movember Foundation was founded in Australia and is now an international organization fighting prostate and testicular cancers, as well as mental health issues for men across the world. And my father was diagnosed with prostate cancer a number of years ago. He's doing great now, but I use a lot of my social media outlets. I use a lot of my comedy to make videos and do posts to raise money, and have been for the last, I think, 9 years now. So there's so much that you can do just by forcing yourself kind of into the spotlight, for lack of a better term, that you can really make awesome changes just by drawing the right kind of attention and using it in a great way.
So do you have a lot of cabaret nights that you like to put together to support, foundations just like this one?
Most of what I've done has been online. I've done almost all of my fundraising over the last 9 years for this organization, at least, almost entirely online. I'll do a little bit in person wherever I'm working at the time. But I'll do videos, I'll do posts, I'll do pictures, and kind of just reiterate the story of the journey that my dad has gone on, and send it out to the Facebook universe and the Twitter universe and the Instagram universe and the YouTube universe. And there's so much reach that we can get now that even 10 years ago didn't exist. And so it's really interesting to see just how far you can spread your reach for something like this, and what an amazingly, overwhelmingly positive response you get from people who resurface out of your past, or people who you've never met, or people who and they pop up and say, hey, my dad is a survivor as well, or I lost somebody to this, so here's $20, here's $100. It's amazing just putting it out there into the universe and letting people see it has this validating effect for folks, and they are able to come back and feel like they're also helping to make some kind of a positive change, which is really neat.
And you're based out of Seattle, correct?
I used to be. When I recorded Trail of the Twister, I was in Seattle. I'm now actually based in Los Angeles. Seattle is an amazing city, and one of the things, I say many things about Seattle that are all positive, with the exception of the weather.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of weather, for all the challenges that the 9 months of drab drizzle bring, the thing that Seattle the couple things that Seattle does wonderfully are its city planning and its artistic community. I mean, just the way that the city planners have figured out how to deal with Seattle and the traffic and everything has been bafflingly smart. And I wish every other city on the planet would model the way that they do things after Seattle, because the world would run better. They just have done such a great job of making everything accessible. You know, the joke in Seattle is that no matter where you're going, it's going to take 20 minutes. It's a block away, it'll be 20 minutes. It's 10 miles away, it'll be 20 minutes. Like that. And it's true. Like, I don't know how they managed to do it, but whether you're going by car, bike, or bus, it's going to take you 20 minutes to get anywhere, which makes everything accessible. And I think that that lends itself to why the artistic community works as well as it does. You know, most cities that I've been in, especially with theater, the theaters are very insular. And so each company has its people that it uses. There's not a lot of cross-pollination. There's a lot of kind of passive-aggressive resistance to working together. But in Seattle, you'll see the same people working at the Seattle Rep and working over at the Seattle Children's Theater. And then they'll pop up when the Intiman was still what it was back when I was living up there. You know, they'll pop up over there, and then they'll pop up at Book It Rep. These actors are going all over the place, and the directors are going all over the place, and it's because the artistic community fosters that kind of cross-pollination and that kind of cooperation that lends itself to being able to make some really incredible art and building this really amazing community that just doesn't really exist in the same way anywhere else.
It just sounds like there are a lot of individuals who like to help one another out. I know some people have suggested other individuals in the community to be a part of the Nancy Drew Games. So I was wondering if that was the case for when you heard about the audition. Did somebody mention it to you, or did you just hear it, you know, online or something like that?
Yeah, you know, I think I just found it online. This was a while ago, so I'm not entirely sure where I found it, but I think I just found it online, got called in, did the audition. But it was a great experience, and it was one of those things where, while I found it through some casting resource, it was neat to actually be called in. You know, I mean, on a lot of those online casting resources, you submit, and for every 500 submissions you make, maybe you get one audition.
Yeah.
And every couple hundred auditions, you know, you book something. So it was great to be working with people who really genuinely seemed like, yes, we are actually holding auditions because we want to see new people, not because we feel like we're doing this perfunctorily and then we'll just have Tim from accounting do it anyway. So it was really nice to like, oh, yes, you guys actually do want to see what we can do and use us for our skills. That's great. I think it was just for Frosty. It was that big chunk. I remember it was that big chunk that he's got where he's describing this superstorm that he got these amazing photographs of. And it's a good paragraph of text. And I remember they had us do that, and then a couple of the screams for when he finds the mice. So they wanted to make sure we had kind of both ends of the spectrum, that there was, we can be engaging and like really into this thing about this storm and how amazing it was, and then also be able to shriek like a little girl when we find a room full of mice.
I really loved this game in particular because of the storm chasing aspect. I'm going to assume you grew up with the film Twister. So we kind of, we knew about that film and we really loved it. And this is kind of similar in a way. You know, you are Frosty, the tech guy for the weather team. And basically, you're there to help with making sure the photography is coming out great, and the videos are coming out great, and showing them and editing them online. It was great to see, you know, that aspect of having the stakes be raised a little bit more, because it is a dangerous job for a lot of individuals who actually partake in it, you know. So would you be interested in possibly doing something like that, you know, at least if only once in your life?
I think so. There's not a whole lot that I wouldn't be interested in doing at least once. One of the perks of being in the acting specifically industry is that depending on the role you're taking on and how intensely you want to research it, you wind up kind of becoming whatever that character is, in a manner of speaking. So, you know, there was, I think my clearest example would be I did a play a couple of years ago called The Elaborate Entrance of Chad Deity, where it was a 5-man show about the pro wrestling world and racism in the pro wrestling world, and what is right and what is wrong and where do you draw the line and what are your ethics, and all through the medium of storytelling from the main character's perspective, who I was playing, who's the guy who, he's the really good wrestler, but he never gets to be the face character because he makes everybody else look so good because he's actually really good at it, that all the people who suck at it, he can make look good, and then they make a bunch of money, and then he just goes back to being the heel, and all right, that's fine. But for that show, I mean, the actors, at least 3 of the actors, almost 4 of them, one of them has to learn 1 or 2 moves, but 3 of the actors have to be able to do full pro wrestling in a wrestling ring. And, we're running the show 8 times a week for a couple of months. So I had to actually train like a pro wrestler, and learn a bunch of the wrestling moves and learn how to take the falls. If anybody listening out there knows what a power bomb is, it's where one wrestler takes another guy up in the air above his head and then slams him down on his back from that height. And I took one of those every single night for months on end. And that was just my job for that time. So, if there were ever a time that storm chasing came up of like, yeah, we really want you to like know the equipment and know the cameras and know like all the details so that it really is authentic. Yeah, sure. Why not? Yeah, I'll dive in.
And mentioning that you got to do a little bit of wrestling, I would also love to mention that you also are a fight choreographer. So can you talk a little bit about that aspect of your job? And because I feel like that has to be taken with such care, because you need to make sure everybody's safe, and that the movements are swift and easy to go through, but also that it's rehearsed down to the T.
The more choreography I design, the more I realize what drew me to it in the first place, which is that exact element of being able to keep people safe in an environment that often goes off the rails and gets very dangerous very quickly. I have yet to work with one of these choreographers, but I always hear stories from my friends who have a choreographer on a show or on a set who says, you're probably going to get hit and that's okay. And, you'll have a bruise, but, it'll heal. And to me, that my goal is always to get everybody through the entire process without a bruise. It's really unlikely and it's yet to happen. But if the goal is to get everybody through it without a bruise, then you're always going to be focused on doing the technique right. You're going to be focused on working with your partner. And you're going to really treat it like the storytelling dance that it needs to be, rather than, oh, this is fun, I'm swinging a sword at a dude's head. Because it does, like you said, it can get extremely dangerous. And there's, anybody in that end of the industry has bled because somebody wasn't paying attention. And so when I work with people, when I'm teaching something, I really do focus on here is the partnering. Here's like the basics of how we're going to move throughout the whole process. Let's get all of that nice and comfy. Let's find out if there are any bum knees or a bad shoulder. Let's work around those. And then let's design the choreography around what the people can do and what they're comfortable doing, so that it looks natural, it feels comfortable, and then let's start teaching the moves at that point at a really slow pace so that they can then really embody it and really feel comfortable with it. So by the time it is at show speed or film speed, they're able to do it consistently, safely, over and over and over again. Whether you're in a play and you're doing it 9 times a week, or you're on set and you've got to do it 20 times in a row, having that really strong foundation of safe, effective communication with your partner and really knowing the moves nice and clean, then actually performing it keeps everybody so much safer, so much happier, and so much less bloody, which is always good.
Well, when you first went to the recording studio for recording Frosty's portion, was it a one-day thing, or did you come in for a couple of sessions?
I think it was just the one day. I'm almost sure it was just the one day. And it was funny because a lot of almost all of the text I hadn't seen until that day. I'd seen, the audition sides, but most of it I was seeing for the first time that day. And so a lot of that day in the studio was okay. So wait, what's going on right now? Who am I talking to? Where are we? What's happening? Where are we at in the game? But once we kind of got the flow of it and we kind of figured out, the sequence of the story arc for Frosty, we were able to pretty smoothly go through the whole thing. But yeah, it was all in one big shot in the studio.
I don't know if they told you ahead of time, but did they tell you who the main culprit was going to be, or did you kind of obviously know that it was not going to be you because of the sides you had been given?
Yeah, I kind of knew. I knew it wasn't going to be me, but I definitely did not know who it was going to be. It was all of. I don't know if I had asked if they would have told me, but not a ton of extraneous information was offered up front. I think they were kind of keeping things close to the chest, as is the case with a lot of voiceover stuff. You kind of don't release that information just in case it does get out in advance of the game.
Well, have you played the other Nancy Drew games since you got to star in this one to see like what other, storylines they have had, or were you intrigued by what you saw in this particular game?
I haven't. I used to be a big gamer. I used to be a big console gamer and a little bit of a PC gamer. And from kind of college forward, I started getting out of it. And I never quite have made my way back in. So I have not sought out any other ones, but I definitely enjoyed getting to play something that I got to be a part of and see what the finished product really looked like as a whole.
It was so great to have you on the show, Andrew. And my final question that I ask everybody who's on the show is, if you could describe your experience working with Her Interactive and being a part of the Nancy Drew universe using one word, what would that be?
Thrilling.